Hello everybody, it's Ben with the DIY Homefront, and I'm sitting in the back of my Ford F-150 pickup truck. And I've got a leak in the rear glass on this 12th generation Ford, and I'm going to fix it. So if your rear glass is leaking and you're wondering what to do, well, look at this video and maybe it'll help you out. Alright, so I still had the water leak after I got the third brake light in. And after doing some research, it looks like the window can leak, especially around the corners right here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of getting any water towards the center, I'm just going to pour some water right here and see if we end up with a leak. And if we do, we know it's the glass that's leaking, not the brake light. It's obvious that the headliner's wet, but hopefully you can see the water dripping. And it does it on both sides.
Now it's dripping.
So if you're like me and you watch the YouTube videos and everybody says it's that third brake light, it might not. You might want to test the corners of the windshield. So I ordered the gasket that goes for that, and when it comes in, I guess we'll be doing some more repairs. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out my other 2013 F-150 videos. Well, there you go. You saw what I did to make sure that the glass was leaking and not the third brake light. Let's take a look at the glass. Now here's the third brake light. But this glass, this piece of plastic, and the glass it's attached to, is actually held in place with a bunch of bolts. And we're going to have to undo those bolts. And we're going to take the glass and we're going to let it fall out and lay on top of this. And that's where we're going to replace the seal. Well, here is the window seal. And I got the 5/16, which is the wider one. You don't want to do the 3/8 because it'll still end up leaking on you. And then I also got a kit that actually has a primer in it. And this is supposed to help prep the surface for that seal. I also got some pliers, some wrenches. I got a pry bar out, and I got my plastic prying tools. Now we're going to have to take quite a bit of stuff out if we're going to get to those bolts that go around. You'll need to get the headrest out of the way. And you can do that by pushing it on both sides and lifting up at the same time, and it'll come all the way out. Now I have modified my seats and put a little lever here, and I can pull this up and it will lift the seat forward. And I've done that because I use the space behind my seat to store things. Well, there's what the latch looks like, and you're not going to have this to make it easy. You'll have to reach in there with something and be able to pull this up, and once you do, it'll unlock the latch. We're gonna have to get this whole piece off, and it's tucked up behind these plastic pieces on each side. So we're gonna have to take each one of these plastic pieces before we can remove that carpeted backboard. And you can see the plastic piece is tucked up underneath this. And that just pries up. Just checking to see if there's any water down there, but there is not. I've been letting mine dry for a long time. Something else you can do is you can just literally pull this back and tuck it off to the side. Well, I hope I can get the camera set up in such a way that you can see everything. Between the bright light from the outside and the fact that my truck's got a black interior, some of these shots might be hard to zoom in on and focus. Sometimes you can use these kind of tools and pop things out. And you can see by the back of it, if you work your way around so that you can get your pry bar under there, it'll come out pretty easy. So let's go ahead and get the other side removed. Hopefully you can see that 7mm bolt in there we'll have to take out to get this plastic cover off. Well, I've got some battery operated impact drivers, and I'm going to use them on this project, but a word of caution, they are really powerful, and we'll touch base on that a little later on. Well, with a little bit of light tugging, you should be able to pull both of these plastic panels loose. And I chose to stretch out the seat belt so that way I could just lay both of these pieces down on the floorboard of the back seat instead of trying to unhook the seat belt harness and everything that goes with that. And you can see I've just got those two pieces set off to the side. And now we can focus our attention to this piece. We've got two pieces of plastic to take off. I got this plastic set of pry bars years ago, but you can find them online or at the auto parts stores. But it's nice to have the set because you don't have to worry about scratching your paint when you're using them. Well, my truck has one of those little movable windows in the back windshield, so I'm going to take the cable that runs to that and these seat belts and zip tie them out of the way. It only takes a little bit of tugging and this carpeted back panel will come right on out. And once you have it out, you can set it off to the side. I'm going to put it in the back of my truck on top of that metal stool so that way the window can rest on it once I get it unbolted. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the two plastic fasteners that hold the headliner in place because we'll have to pull this down so we can get to the bolts behind it. It's a little bit hard to see because I've got some sound deadening material that I put in the back of my truck, but you can see we've got screws that end up holding the back glass into place. There's some on the sides. And now that we've got the headliner down, you can see we've got some in here that we need to get to. Now if you've got a defroster, you're going to end up with some connectors on the side that you're going to want to undo. Next, if you've got a truck like mine with that small sliding window, there's a cable leading to a motor that we're going to have to manage if we want to be able to actually take that back window and set it on top of that piece of carpet that we've got in the bed of the truck. I removed the white zip tie and then I pulled off the plastic fastener that was holding the cable. The other side of the window is the same way. There's a cable that runs to the motor that you'll need to disconnect. Once I've got the bolt for this strap removed, I will work my way around the back window, taking all of the bolts off. The only ones that were hard to get off were the ones above the headliner because I didn't want to put any creases in it. Fortunately, the headliner has a magnet that helps hold it up even if the plastic clips are out. Now I hope your window comes out a whole lot easier than mine did. I started out by very carefully going around the edge and trying to pry it out, which is what you really have to do because you don't want to apply too much pressure in any one spot because you could crack the glass. But it took quite a long time to work my way around the window, loosening this side and then going back and loosening it a little bit more, alternating from being on the outside of the truck to the inside of the truck, using a large screwdriver, using the plastic pieces. It probably took me about 30 minutes to get this window out. But like I said, you need to take your time and be careful because you don't want to break the glass. That would defeat the purpose of doing it yourself to save some money. Whew. And it is finally out. That was a lot of effort. I believe they call it butyl tape, the stuff that they put around the window to seal it up, but it is sticky like tar. Well, you can see there's a hole in the body of the truck. That's where a rivet would have gone. And below that, that's a seam where two body panels meet. It looks like water was leaking there also, on both sides. I have no idea where the rivets or part of the plastic trim is gone, but they're missing. Well, it looks like I'm going to have to order these two plastic pieces and we'll pick it up when they come in. Well, these are called cab corner exterior trim molding, and I will leave the part number in the video description. Well, I have cleaned the area up where that trim molding was supposed to go, and you can see the hole where the rivet should have been. And now this is the other side, and it really is awful dirty underneath there. I don't think any of the self-adhesive was holding this trim molding down anymore. And it looks like the original rivets that they used to hold the molding in were actually plastic. And here are the two part numbers if you want to pause this and write them down. Here's my pot rivet kit, and I'm going to end up using an aluminum rivet with an aluminum mandrel because I don't want this to rust or corrode. And I don't think I've got one that's quite small enough to fit in that hole, so I might have to enlarge the hole for the rivet to fit in just a little bit. This area is going to really need to be cleaned up, and I'll start by using my eraser that's meant to take pinstriping off of a car. It attaches to my drill and it will get most everything off. And I should have been more careful because this eraser works really well. I have actually removed some of the paint. Fortunately, underneath the paint was an epoxy where they glued the panels of the body together, so I don't have to worry about anything rusting. There's mineral spirits on this shop towel, and I'm going to use that to wipe the area and clean it really well so there's no grease or any of that residue from the adhesive tape. Well, I would have preferred not to have had to drill out the hole in the metal roof, but to use the rivets that I've got on hand, that's what I had to do. So I'm going to enlarge this hole just a little bit, and then I'm going to go back with some touch-up paint and touch up the bare metal and anywhere where I have removed any of the white paint with the eraser wheel. Of course, I'm going to have to do the same thing to the other side and give it about an hour for that paint to dry. Alright, it's time for me to ramble for just a minute. I don't have a large channel, so I don't have a dedicated following, but if you're watching this video, you're probably trying to figure out how to do it. And this is where I really want to teach you something and learn from my mistakes. If you're thinking about replacing your rear glass, definitely check out those plastic pieces, because if they're bad like mine were, you're going to need to replace them. Now, unfortunately for me, I was stuck going to town because I needed my truck. So I ended up taking the glass and putting the glass back in. So I'm going to need to undo it. The rags are here as a spacer just so I wouldn't have metal against metal. So I ordered the plastic trim pieces and it took a couple days for them to come in. And in the meantime, I needed to use my truck. Well, I didn't want to stick the back glass on with that butyl tape because I didn't want to have to spend all the time trying to pry it back off, because I was really worried I might actually break the glass by doing that. So I decided I was going to use my truck and I was going to clean things up real quick and put the back window back in. Well, there's no film of me taking the black stuff off around the window or around where the window seats onto the back of the truck. But that took a lot longer than I thought. You know, at first I thought it would just take like 5 or 10 minutes, and I didn't want to set up the camera. I already needed to go to town to get something and I was running late. Long story short, I probably spent about an hour and a half cleaning off the back of the cab and the trim around the window where it goes up. And I don't have any footage of that. But the long story of this is, check to see if you need those trim pieces, because it's a whole lot easier to order those ahead of time and have them in hand so you can start and finish this project all in one day. Alright, back to the project. I ended up drilling out both of the rivet holes, and I want you to see this. It's hard to see it, but you can see where the paint's a little bit yellowed. That yellow is where that butyl tape's going to go. And look how the butyl tape goes right across that little divot. The two body panels of the truck don't line up very well, and the lower body panel ends up creating a channel for the water to run, and the upper body panel has glue on it, which makes that channel even deeper. So I'm going to take a sander and I'm just going to go ahead and sand off all that excessive glue on the upper body panel. Looks like they had tape going all the way to the very front. I wonder if they put the tape on the truck first and then put this on. Well, I had some 3M double-sided automotive sticky tape that's about 3/4 of an inch wide, and I chose to put that on the back of these trim pieces. You know, as I edit this video and think about it, I don't think the water really was leaking around the window. I think it was leaking in through those rivet holes, because I don't know where they went to, but both of the lower rivets were nowhere to be found. The touch-up paint that I put on the lower rivet hole should be dry by now. A lot better hole. Well, if you end up putting the double-sided tape on the trim pieces, just make sure you line up those rivet holes, because it's going to be hard to move that piece of trim around afterwards. Well, when you're looking up these trim pieces, the prices vary quite a bit. I found you could buy a set of them for like $60 or one of them for $91. Now I'm assuming that when they used the plastic rivets, it was because they were probably self-sealing. But I ended up using some automotive gasket type sealant and put it around the rivets and then coated the top of the rivets after I got them inserted and popped. A little silicone sealant to make sure that there's no water that can get in there, and I'll move on to the other rivets. I used a lot more of the silicone sealant on the upper rivets just because I knew there would be a lot of wind-blown moisture across those rivets. And I installed the other trim piece on the other side the same way. Alright, it looks like it's time to put down the butyl tape and finish this project up. Now I spent quite a bit of time cleaning, and I found that a small screwdriver worked really good at getting the majority of that old tape up, followed by a lot of rags with mineral spirits wiping everything down until it was all removed. And you can see this one spot right here. This is your start-stop spot. It allows some to cover. So that's where we're going to start. Now I am slightly depressing this onto it, but I'm making sure I get it right in the center is the only place I'm pushing. Because ideally when we tighten these nuts, we want that to be the thing that flattens this out. Well, the butyl tape is almost like a rope, and I'm pressing it into that channel. And I've seen where they say that you shouldn't touch it with your hands, you should be using that wax paper that comes with it, but it is up to you what you choose to do. And when I push this down, I'm pinching it so that I make a triangle. If I push it all, I'm not flattening it out because I still want it to be very raised up in the air. Well, I will leave the product information on this butyl tape in the video description, but it's easy to work with and you can just cut it with a plain pair of scissors or razor knife. Well, hopefully you can see how deep this channel is that's created by the two body panels where they overlap each other. The water was either coming in here or those rivet holes. Whether I should or not, I'm going to put a little extra right there. And once again, you can see the yellow line. I don't need to go up high because it's not going to make a difference anyway. If you're by yourself and you've got one of these rear windows that has that sliding glass, it'll make it a lot easier for you because you can take one of those nuts and put it on the bolt just by reaching in through the open window. You can see everything is lined up pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and get all of these bolts started on before I tighten any of them up. Don't forget to secure the cables that go to the sliding glass rear window or the wires that connect to the rear window defroster. If you look at the paint where the back window touches the body, there's a small black line. And I want to try to make sure as I tighten these bolts up that I get this back window back into the exact same spot it was in. I'm only going to tighten these bolts up a little bit and keep going around the window in a circle until finally I've got them all tightened up. What I want to do is I want to get that back window up against the paint of the back of the truck. I am surprised, even though I've tightened all the bolts up, the rubber gasket around the back window still isn't touching the paint of the body. Well, I went all the way around to the window again and tightened up the bolts a little bit more.
I'm doing is I'm judging.
After I tightened up all the bolts for a third and final time, I took the truck and pulled it out of the carport and took a hose to the back window for several minutes to see if it was going to leak anywhere. Well, there were no leaks, but I wanted to share something with you just so you're careful.
Be careful you don't over tighten, because you can snap them off. I'm just lucky that's on the bottom and low.
What I should have done is I should have tightened all the bolts up by hand instead of using that small DeWalt impact driver. Next, I put on the 2 straps and secured those 2 bolts by hand tightening them. Then I moved on to putting the carpet back in place. Mine was held up with those 2 large round plastic fasteners. The 2 large plastic trim pieces that the seat belt comes through has that 1 bolt at the top, but there's several little clips that you have to line up along the side and bottom before it actually will fit in right. And here's the first and then second plastic fastener that holds up the headliner. It was not easy for me to get this bolt lined up with the hole, but once I did, I tightened it up and put on that plastic cover. The last 2 pieces to go on were the gasket that goes around the door and then the plastic threshold at the bottom of the door that you step out and over.
See, I need, yep, this one. Those rubber things don't like to come out sometimes. So there was one thing I saw somebody else doing. He said not to touch this with your hand because the oil and stuff on your hand could make it not stick. He suggested that you tear a piece of this off. And if you have to touch it, end up using that as a way to touch it. Well, it's been a couple of months since I finished putting in the rear window and I finally got it edited. It was somewhere along here that I had the 1 bolt that I sheared off. But I have not had any leaks. It is dry to the bone. And I still think it was probably these little trim pieces, both the rivet back here and the rivet up top, that were causing it to leak. Well, if you have a 2013 F-150 that's leaking, I hope this video helps you figure out your problem. You know, I say it's a DIY homestead and most people would probably think I got animals and I'm farming, but the biggest thing is I just do it all. Electrician, plumber, auto, whatever needs to be done around this house, I do it. And hopefully all these videos are helping you accomplish your tasks. Well, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Check out my other playlists and I'll see you in whatever video comes next.